I bumped into the internet, and I know for you is something that has always been there, but there was a time before the internet. I saw the internet, I was 23 years old, and I thought, this thing is gonna work. My name is Fabrizio Capobianco. I hope I'm spelling that right. Alberto Netti has been my co-founder for multiple startups, so he's with me today, so we get two for the price of one. The idea, since you just came in, the idea is to just tell you a little bit about my story, and you're going to hear a lot of stories this week, I guess. Then a little bit about his story, and I lived here for 23 years. I started as a student in Sondrio, which is the heart of Valtellina, and I went to do classical studies because my grandma was a professor of Greek and Latin, and she told me that that will open my mind even if I wanted to be an engineer. So when I went to university, college, but my mind was so open that I swear to my grandma, but I managed to go through, became a computer scientist. That's where I met Alberto. So we were together in Pavia. It's a little town south of Milan in a place called Collegio Borromeo, where actually Eric went as well. So it's a great experience because it looks like an American college because there are people that come in from different faculties and going to school in different places. So it's very different from the experience you have in Italy, which is if you're an engineer, you talk to engineers. And if you are a scientist or something else, or philosopher, you talk to philosophers. It's a place where you have philosopher and engineers together. His degree is in business and economics. Mine is in engineering. That's why we kind of got together, started companies. That's a big advantage that we have in little places in Italy. That's one. So I got my PhD in computer science. And in '94, I started my first company because I bumped into the internet. And I know for you is something that has always been there, but there was a time before the internet. I saw the internet, I was 23 years old, and I thought, this thing is gonna work, and I'm gonna start a company. I had no idea whatsoever what I was doing, but I was the first one in Italy to create a company called Internet Graffiti, and we were doing websites. And that worked well because we were just the first one. And I had to go around talking to people, said, you need a website. And they will tell me, what the fuck is a website? And you need an email first. What's an email? And how do I connect to the internet? So that's how early that was. But I was lucky because it actually became something important. And started another company and involved Alberto in that one. A few years later, and we did an intranet company. So our idea was the internet is going to get into the companies. And so we built the intranet it wasn't called intranet, for Bocconi University, then Kraft Novartis, the Italian stock exchange, RAI. And then in '99, I decided that having done two companies in Italy, I wanted to come to Silicon Valley. And the idea was, I'm happy to play in Serie A, but I want to play in Champions League. This is the place to be if you want to start a software company. There was probably even more so in '99 than it is now. But I still think, and we're going to give you some example why we think this is the place to be if you want to start a company in the tech space. So I was here first in '95 as an invited scientist at the HP labs in Palo Alto, and I really liked the place. And I first thing that happened to me was in '95 I arrived at the Hewlett-Packard headquarters, and there was the office of Hewlett and the office of Packard. So that was actually a pretty interesting thing on the same building where I was. I just realized that the level of knowledge was similar to mine because of the internet. Before the internet, it was hard to compete with Silicon Valley. Then all of a sudden, the knowledge I had in a little town south of Milan was the same I had here. I was actually working on Java alpha version, and at HP, they had no idea what it was because it was built by Sun and Menlo Park. So I had to teach them how to use that. So first thing I got is, okay, I'm not an American, but I know as much as they do. Spent 3 years, then came back, and then I thought, okay, shit, I want to go back to Silicon Valley so bad. And then in '99, I was here, and I went to Stanford, and I saw, it was March, I saw these people biking around, the weather was too good, and I thought, okay, I'm going to come to Silicon Valley. And then I jumped into the library, and I opened an email account at Hotmail, which was the first time where people could actually have an email account without a job in a company. So sent an email to my wife, said, we're moving, get ready, get packing, you're going to be at Stanford. And then she became a postdoc at Stanford, came here in 99, and I wanted to start a company. And I said, okay, I'm going to start a company. And then I spoke to a bunch of people, got to a building up here with a view of the Golden Gate and the Bay Bridge, and they told me, do you have a visa? And I was, nope. Okay, so find a job, get an H1, then get a green card, then start your company. So in 99, it was a little bit easier. I went around trying to find a job. There were job fairs that you could go to, and they would just offer you jobs. And I had 2 weeks to find a job, and in 2 weeks, I got 3 job offers. I decided to go with that company called TIBCO. We did the IPO in 99. The startup here, as you probably heard, Silicon Valley had a peak in 2000 and it had a crash in 2001. TIBCO did an IPO in 99. We went to the roof. And then 2001, we started firing everybody because it was that's how things change in Silicon Valley. One of the things you're going to hear here is that this is a place where everything happens, everything goes so well, people get hired. Things that you're probably not going to hear from anybody is that when things go bad, this is really not a great place to be. So the things that you see in movies where there are, you walk in with your badge and you just scan it and it says beep, red, and then you turn around, there is someone with a box that follows you to your office. That happened multiple times in my company in 2001. The good thing is that I got my green card just before that. I had to fire a lot of people. It wasn't fun because firing is not fun. And not knowing if you're going to be the next one is not fun either. But that's what happens in Silicon Valley. You go to the roof, they give you a lot of money, you can do things. If things go bad, bang, you restart. And I restarted thinking, okay, I'm going to do another company. This time I have my green card, I'm doing it. The thing that I learned in those 3 years at TIBCO in Palo Alto is that the team that I had in Italy, the first 2 companies I did, were better than the people I found here. And this is a thing that nobody's going to tell you in Silicon Valley, but there's not enough talent here. If you want to start a company here and you want to hire talent, they are not going to come to work for you. Because if they're really good, they're starting their own company, so they're out of the question. If they don't want to start a company, they're going to work for someone who's about to go IPO or very close to go IPO or has raised a Series B, so has a lot of money and you're too early. If they can't do that, they're going to go work for Google or Facebook, the people that really not have that drive. If they cannot make it, they'll come to work for you. At that point, you have mediocre people, with all the respect for people that are that level, that are not going to be as good as the ones you can find here or anywhere in the world. So the thing I learned is, if I want engineers, top engineers, I'm going to get them in Italy. And this is the place to be for everything else. This is the place where you find the money for crazy ideas. This is the place where you find the partners to grow. You have, Apple, Google, Meta, and everyone around you. And this is the place where you sell your company or you go IPO. This last one is the big one. You can find money pretty much anywhere now, even in Italy. Very hard to grow because you don't have partners like here. You don't have OpenAI that is next to your door. You find the founder in a bar. But mainly, you cannot sell a company at the value you can sell here, at the speed you can sell here, anywhere else in the world. So this remains, to me, the best place to start a company, and because it's the place where you can exit, and you can grow super fast. And so this is the place for hypergrowth. If you have a crazy idea, you find the money and you go all the way. And if things don't work out, you shut it down and do another one. Big difference from Europe is that you can fail, and it's not a big deal. Of course, if you fail 10 times, you're probably not going to make it. But the story you're going to hear that a VC is more likely to give money to someone who failed twice rather than someone that never tried is true. They are, if you fail and you know why you failed and you can tell a story why you failed and you create a good narrative around it, you have experience, and so people are more willing to give you money than not. In Europe, if you fail once, you're fucked. And because you can't fail, most of the Italian companies I know, and I speak about Italy because some of you are Italians, I guess, but it's my experience, they don't shut down companies because of that. So one of the issues we have in Italy is that people get money, and then after 2 years, it's very clear that the company is not going to make it. but they're going to push it another 10 years because they don't want to tell their mom they failed or anyone around. And so that becomes a small system integration company and never grows. And we lose these people that maybe after 3 years they're ready to start another one and have learned so much that the next one will be the good one. Long story short, that's by 2002, got here, decided to start a company, and hired a bunch of people in Pavia, and then started going around with this idea that we would have a lot of devices. I had a Nokia phone, which was not a smartphone. The smartphone is 2007, the iPhone 2007, so this is 2002. But I had the idea that my cell phone had an address book, and if I lose the phone, I would lose my contacts. And my computer had Outlook, and I wanted to keep them in sync and make sure I could save something, all my information somewhere where it would be safe. So we came up with this idea that was a cloud server where you can synchronize data from your devices. And the idea was we're going to have a lot of devices, so people were going to have a lot of devices. They have a need to keep them in sync. Built it on open source, became the largest open source project in mobile. And then I went out fundraising, and I decided to go open source because I thought open source is the way software is going to be developed in the future. And this is kind of telling of what the Americans call timing, and the Italians call culo. That is, I got out, it was March 2004, and I went, okay, I'm doing this mobile open source. And tell the story, and VC looks at me and said, there's no IP in open source, so there's no way you're going to get money. I said, okay, maybe you don't get it, but I think that go to the second one, go to the third one. At the fourth one, you say, okay, there's no open source, there's no VC money for this thing. I'm going to start a story around a mobile synchronization server platform. And I was going around, I mean, I'm Italian. It's hard to get money here if you are like no one, you didn't get out of Stanford. The story about, oh, you got a great idea, people will give you money, is true, but it takes a lot of time and effort. And then nobody was giving me money. And then 6 months later, so I said, okay, fuck it. I'm going to start a company. We're making money. We were profitable. I can do it anyway and without raising money. And then in November, so 6 months later, I'm at an open source conference. I have my tablecloth on it, and Funambol, that's the name of the company. And a dude shows up, an open source company. It didn't look like an open source developer. It started asking me questions that were not about coding. So I was like, okay, that's strange. And I said, what do you do for a living? I'm a VC. Okay, so a VC, an open source company, that's interesting. Then another guy shows up, I'm a VC. I said, and the third one says, sorry, why are you here? He said, well, open source is the future of software, and we want to invest in any open source company we can find. And so we're looking for the leaders of open source in every category. That was when, in August, MySQL raised the first round and came out with this idea of dual licensing. I remember we went to a conference in London together, and we met the CEO of MySQL, who was a friend of mine now. And he kind of told us the story how you could actually make it. And it's the same thing as MongoDB has done and a lot of other companies. We started with the license, built this license around it. And all of a sudden in November, I had term sheet coming to me. So this timing meant that 6 months later, I had no chance. And then all of a sudden, boom, we got term sheets. So first one I got, I somehow decided that the valuation of the company was $8 million. And that tells you something about when you're ignorant. You don't know. I said, well, I don't know, we're worth 8 million. I don't know how we came up with 8 million, but I had a meeting. I had a meeting with a VC. He really liked this. He wanted to invest. He brought me out for dinner. He brought a good-looking ladies with him. I don't know why. It's not politically correct. I don't think they would do it anywhere. But maybe I was Italian, so he gave me good wine, and so he wanted to convince me that 8 million was not. It was too much. And he wanted to invest at 3 million. I think he wanted to give us $1 million. And I stood strong for no reason. And then at the end of the dinner, he said, okay, 8 million it is, boom. And then I got a term sheet for 8 million. And then we went through the process, term sheet, everything. And then we started spending money because now we were getting money. So I hope all of a sudden we're going to have $1 million. I had $300 in the bank when he called me and said, look, I think we need 2 million. We're going to raise another $1 million from someone else that I'll bring in. And the valuation is going to be 8. And then I thought, okay, that would double the dilution, which is really not a problem But you're young, you have no idea. Spoke to Alberto, called him. He was in Italy, and we said, look, we're strong. This guy wants to come in. He said, no, it's a million or nothing. So I called him back, said, look, it's a billion or nothing. He said, okay, nothing. I'm like, no, sorry. I didn't mean that. He said, no, I cannot work with a CEO that doesn't want to work with me. And we would be on the board together, and if you do this now, it's going to be worse later, so bye. So I still had $300 in the bank. And I was like, I think we made a mistake. On this one, I think we made a mistake. So it's that in startup, you make a lot of mistakes. And so I went back, fundraising, got a lady that from Walden said, we'll give you $2.5 million, still an $8 million valuation. And I thought, man, $2.5 million was exactly the number I had in mind. Still at 5 cents, I thought, okay, 2.5 and at 8 pre is 10.5 post, so we're giving 25%. It's a bit, a lot, but that's okay. And then she called me and said, you know what, I think we should invite someone else, and they're gonna bring another 2.5 million, so we're gonna raise 5 million. I thought, 5 million was really the number I really had in mind. So my Series A was $5 million, and I can tell you with the moment we closed, I was in my convertible, Miata, I think, and I got a call that we got $5 million in the bank. I thought this was, the peak of my career. And with 5 million, I'm gonna retire because this is so much money. I don't know how we're gonna use it. I had no idea. I had 20 people, no, maybe less, 10 people in Italy. How do we spend $5 million? We spent $5 million in 18 months because that's what happens when you have money. It seems like hard, but they go. And the VC are going to push you because 18 months later, you need to do another round so that they have an up round. And so we managed to do that. Went through, ups and downs, VCs, term sheets. It was a long story, but in 2007, 8, we raised a Series B, so raised another $18 million. One thing that I learned there, that once we raised the Series B, the VC told me, now you got to hire 30 engineers in 30 days. And I was in Pavia, and I went around and said, is there 30 engineers in this town? Can we get them from anywhere else? And the answer is no. Italians don't like to move, and there's no way you're going to get 30 people in 30 days in Italy if you live in a small town. So that was the trigger for my next company. So anyway, raised this all money in 2010. We hired a new CEO, who is still the CEO of Unumble to date. There's an Indian guy who kept the engineering team in Italy. And I really wanted to exit at that point. The board didn't want to exit and thought we could go bigger than that. 2009, the App Store came. So it changed everything. And then Dropbox came out, Box came out. So that was, in my opinion, our path. But we had some disagreement with the board. But the company is still alive and growing. He's still the CFO of the company. I'm not. I was the president for another 10 years. Then in 2012, I started another company. And this one I did it for myself. I like soccer. I'm a Juventus fan, and I'm sorry for those of you who are not. And I, when I was in Italy, I would watch every game with my father and friends. And when I got here, I was alone. So I thought, I'm going to build a platform to watch sports with friends, because I like sports. This is my fourth company. I can do whatever I want. And so that one, though, because of that experience in Pavia, I thought I'm going to build it 100% remote. So that was 2012. I'm going to get Italians wherever they are, because they don't move, and I don't care. I do open source. I'm a developer, still code. And I can code with people anywhere else. So first guy we got was in Ragusa, in Sicily, because I wrote a post on Twitter saying, I need the best iOS developer in Italy. And I got 5 non-modest people to answer. And one of those guys is still, I think, the best iOS developer I've ever seen. I got another one in Sardinia, who I'm working still with. And then we started growing in Rome, Milan. So we hired people remotely wherever they were. And we started this concept of a liquid company, 100% remote. I was the only one here. I had the VCs around me and the company to partner with, the raise capital, but we had people everywhere. And that's sort of the best model I've ever found to build companies. I would go back every 3 months to have a retreat for a week. And in 3 months, you have the plan. If you're a startup, you can execute a plan without changing direction too fast. Then you get together and look back at the last 3 months. We should have done differently. And then you plan the next 3 months. And you go and execute. If you move too fast, then it's hard to just get a line. 3 months is a board meeting. You usually do quarterly board meetings, so it aligns with the board meeting. So I would do a board meeting, preparation with the team, board meeting, planning, go. And so that was the step. That works phenomenally well. We started working first with baseball and American football, and then I got an email from Juventus. And I thought it was a joke because I know everybody knows that I'm a Juventus fan. I got an email, Mr. Capobianco, we saw your app for the Super Bowl. Can you build one for us? And I went to look at the email, the trail. I'm a geek. And it was coming actually from Turin. So I went to Turin and had started negotiating with them. And once I walked in, I thought, don't tell them you're a fan because they're going to screw you. And they sat me in a room. There was Platini sitting on there. It took me 3 seconds, and I said, I'm a fan. So that deal wasn't a great deal, but we actually launched with Juventus. Then we sadly upgraded to Real Madrid and Barcelona. And we had 40 million people using our platform. And then we sold it to a company here in Silicon Valley called Minerva Networks. And I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of Minerva Networks. So I work on television and a little bit of sports in the morning. And so that's my life. What happened after COVID is that my daughter, after 18 years here, decided that she wanted to go to college in Europe, in Scotland, in St. Andrews. And so I was working remotely because I'd done that for a long time. And then I decided, okay, we're going to Europe. So I moved back to Italy 2 years ago. So now I'm more in Italy than he is. The next thing I want to tell you a little bit after he presents himself and gives you some pointers about Silicon Valley is what I'm doing in Italy now to create a place where we can ship people to Silicon Valley with the experience that we built over this many years.